past the clouds, over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
Well, good afternoon, greetings as always, and welcome back. You know, as I mentioned last week, that I had good news and I had bad news. And the good news was that President Trump did not win the Nobel Prize for Peace. The bad news was that U.S. regime change operative Maria Corina Machado did. What are her qualifications for the Nobel Peace Prize? In a CBS News interview, she declared, "The only way to stop the suppression in Venezuela is by force, U.S. force." My guest believes that maybe the Nobel Committee thinks that sounds like working for peace and reconciliation. Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. With each show, my guests and I provide insight and analysis into current events and the broader historical context in which most of these events take place. I want to quickly touch on one of today's headlines. President Trump hails, quote, "historic dawn of a new Middle East," end quote, in a speech to Israel's Knesset. Again, he hailed this historic dawn after all living hostages were, captives were reunited with their families. And also parallel or in concert with this, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did not attend the summit today in Egypt relating to ending the Gaza war. His office said, after Cairo had earlier announced he would take part, a prospect that could have been awkward for some confirmed guests, his office said that the meeting he declined due to the timing's proximity to the beginning of a Jewish holiday. Folks, I do understand that Israeli government officials, they do travel on holidays for very, very important reasons. And if the historic dawn of a new Middle East is not a historic reason, I don't know what is. With that being said, on today's episode, the issue before us is the awarding of the Nobel Prize for Peace. And what does this really indicate? My guest has served as the first UN independent expert on the promotion of a democratic and equitable international order, former UN rapporteur, a internationally recognized human rights attorney. He is an author. He is Alfred de Zayas. Alfred, as always, welcome back.
Thank you, Wilmer, for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. Connecting the dots is rational. Connecting the dots is logical. And we're living in a world of fake news, fake history, fake law. I'm sick and tired of being interviewed by journalists who try to twist my words, try to force me to say what I do not intend to say. By the way, they never succeed because I always embarrass them. And that's why there's some outfits that don't invite me anymore because they know that they cannot force me to say their narrative. I'm going to say my narrative. As the case may be, you started with Donald Trump at the Knesset. I really think it is a disgrace. As an American, it's a disgrace that our president speaks in the Knesset and that our president is buddy-buddy with a genocidal killer who is sought for trial at the International Criminal Court in The Hague. And that may be one of the reasons why he did not go to Egypt, because he does not enjoy immunity. You see, Article 27 of the Statute of Rome, the Statute of the International Criminal Court, says that heads of states do not enjoy immunity when it comes to war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, etc. So there's a very distinct danger that Mr. Netanyahu could be arrested and referred to The Hague for trial. And not only that, if he flies over a country that is a state party to the Statute of Rome, the country could force the plane down because the country has sovereignty over its airspace. Mm-hmm. If a plane carrying Mr. Netanyahu flies over, most European countries are states parties to the ICC. So say they fly over Italy or they fly over France. In principle, France would be obliged, since it's entering its jurisdiction, to arrest him and refer him to The Hague.
What if they didn't?
Highly political matters, but you know that when it's a Latin American country that is not very powerful, you may remember that the plane of Evo Morales back in 2013 was made to land in Austria, supposed to be a neutral state, in Austria, and they wanted to see whether Edward Snowden, by chance, was on board. He was not. But this was a major diplomatic scandal to bring down this plane on the suspicion that someone who is entitled to asylum under the Geneva Convention of 1951 could actually be arrested, say, if he had been on the plane. But again, we're used to double standards. International law is applied a la carte, and for the last 80 years, the West, United States, France, United Kingdom, have gotten away with everything. That is ending. And I am convinced that if Netanyahu were to fly over certain countries in Africa or in Asia, he would be arrested. And
what if he had flown? What if he had gone to Egypt? And as you just indicated, Egypt is a signatory to the ICC, and had not arrested him.
Well, that has happened before. Also, the ICC issued what I would term a fundamentally flawed arrest warrant against Putin back in 2023, accusing him of violating the Article 3 of the Genocide Convention because of the evacuation of children from the combat zone in the Donbass. And it's absolutely ridiculous because under international humanitarian law, you are required to evacuate civilians who might be collateral damage if war necessarily is going to hit a military target and you're close to it. So the humanitarian thing to do is to evacuate these children. Well, out of that, they made a case of genocide. As I said, for any lawyer it is so ridiculous, it's so preposterous. But again, even Russia has been very flexible on this issue, and they, are cooperating with the parents. We know exactly how many people were evacuated to Russia, and if persons who have authority over the children want to have the children back, Russia, of course, will let them go back. They are there only for purposes of protection, not for purposes of indoctrination or for purposes of destroying their cultural identity. But leaving that aside, what bothers me of Trump is that he makes us all complicit in the genocide committed by Israel. He makes us all complicit because he condones what Netanyahu has done. He is a Holocaust denier when we can refer to this genocide as a Holocaust of the Palestinians of Gaza. Speaking in the Knesset, I mean, if he had a little bit of common sense, he would not do that. But of course, he loves to present himself. He loves platforms. He loves every photo opportunity. And it is all arrogance, self-righteousness, and self-congratulation. The man is in love with himself. It is such a narcissist that it's painful for an American to have to watch that.
You just mentioned genocide denier. Aren't there a couple of international law cases where people have been charged with being genocide deniers? I think the Armenian, somebody in Switzerland might have been charged with denying the Armenian genocide.
Under national laws. You see, you have in Germany, in France, in the United Kingdom, in Switzerland, you have legislation that says if you deny a genocide, if you whitewash a genocide or a crime against humanity, that is tantamount to incitement. I disagree with it. I disagree with this kind of interpretation.
Because it violates the freedom of speech.
Incitement is incitement.
Right.
Incitement is what Yoav Gallant did. This systematic incitement of hatred toward the Palestinians. And that's something that the media is guilty of. New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, CNN, BBC, The Times, Le Figaro, Le Monde, Die Zeit, the Spiegel, the Frankfurter Allgemeine, and even here in Switzerland, the Neue Zürcher Zeitung. It is a disgrace how they simply do the apology of the genocide committed by Israel. That is allowed. But if you were in Switzerland to deny that 6 million Jews were murdered during the Second World War, you might find yourself condemned for incitement to hatred, for anti-Semitism.
Right.
But that is, of course, double standards, because they do not do it. If you say that the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians is not just ethnic cleansing, but it is genocide, well, you may find that someone accuses you of anti-Semitism. But on the other side, if you deny that it is a genocide, you get away with it. Because Macron has said it's not a genocide. Merz has said it's not a genocide. Ursula von der Leyen says it's not a genocide. For that reason, by the way, we here in Geneva, I'm a member of the Geneva International Peace Research Institute. we submitted on the 22nd of May 2024 a 29-page legal brief accusing the European Commission and Ursula von der Leyen of complicity in genocide. We repeated that with a new legal brief, expanded to include also Kaja Kallas, the foreign minister of the European Union. These were legal briefs handed over to the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in The Hague under Article 15 of the Statute of Rome. Needless to say, the International Criminal Court has done nothing about it because, as I said, they're equals and equals, huh? And so you do not touch people like Ursula von der Leyen. Interesting to note, a legal brief was recently submitted against Emmanuel Macron, accusing him of complicity in genocide, and even against Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy. I mean, certainly Friedrich Merz and Keir Starmer would deserve this honor more than Meloni. But in any event, there's a certain movement. And when these Western politicians are being accused of complicity in genocide, this is something that would be inconceivable 10 or 15 years ago. So people are indeed waking up, and they're saying, well, I mean, if we do have the rule of law and if we do have a statute of Rome, well, let's apply it uniformly. Let's apply it against the Western leaders, et cetera, et cetera. But the ICC, as I explain in my book, The Human Rights Industry, the ICC is one of the many institutions that has been hijacked, one of the many institutions that has been largely in the service of the United States and Europe, even though the United States is not even a signatory of it. But that aside, I am optimistic because so many civil society organizations like ours have now decided if there is law, there must be a remedy. Also, ubi jus, ibi remedium. Therefore, we want to have here a remedy, and the remedy will be the prosecution of these criminals.
Before we move over to the latest awardee of the Nobel Prize for Peace, quickly, your thoughts on this 20-point scheme, as they label it, a peace plan. It really seemed to be the formation of capitulation and surrender. And I don't see how this lasts, as they're now calling this the new era of peace in the region.
Well, this is public relations. I mean, we are surrounded by public relations and propagandistic narratives. Of course, it's not a peace agreement. It is a dictate. It is an ultimatum. And we all welcome, of course, the release of prisoners on both sides. That Palestinian prisoners who've been unjustly held in detention in Israel and in the Palestine occupied territories, and the Israeli detainees, they should all be released. And we all welcome the fact that the level of violence has decreased. But the only peace arrangement for the Middle East is the full implementation of existing resolutions of the Security Council, like Resolution 242, which specifically demanded that Israel withdraw from the occupied territories. There are dozens of resolutions of the General Assembly that have never been implemented. There are two advisory opinions of the International Court of Justice, one of the 9th of July 2004, one of the 19th of July 2024. There is the pending case, South Africa against Israel. And if you read any of the submissions, I mean, it is so crystal clear that genocide has taken place. For 3 years, the United Nations Independent Commission of Inquiry on Palestine examined whether the threshold had been crossed from a crime against humanity into the level of genocide. The president of this commission of inquiry was my former, acquaintance, friend, the former High Commissioner for Human Rights, Navi Pillay, perhaps the best High Commissioner for Human Rights that we ever had since 1994 when the function was created. In any event, she came in June, and take that back, in September this year at this session, the 60th session of the Human Rights Council, and presented a 72-page report concluding that, of course, Israel has committed genocide and that Israel is committing genocide. And then, of course, demanding, as the International Court of Justice already did, that Israel withdraw from all occupied territories, since the occupation is illegal, since the siege, the blockade of Gaza is also illegal in international law. But of course, Israel has proven to be an outlaw since its very beginning. It started as a terroristic state. It started through terrorism, blowing up the King David Hotel in 1946, murdering the UN envoy, Count Folke Bernadotte from Sweden. There have been countless terrorist acts committed by various Israeli governments, and the press doesn't seem to want to remind you about the scandal of the pagers that were booby-trapped and exploded. I mean, this is a classical terroristic act, which is indiscriminate, and of course, it killed any number of innocent civilians. I mean, it's a country, a rogue state, a country that cannot be accepted in the community of nations, must be expelled from the United Nations under Article 6 of the United Nations Charter, and it must be really isolated in the world. And it would be isolated in the world because its only, quote, friend, unquote, is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump wants to put the reputation of the United States behind Israel, thereby making us all complicit. You're an American, I'm an American, and I can say not in our name. I mean, this is outrageous, but we are powerless at this moment. We can vote him out of office, but only in 3 years' time.
This is the final point on this. In listening to as much of his, I don't know what you want to call it, spectacle, as you referred to it earlier, in listening to his spectacle today, he incriminated himself as being complicit in the genocide when he said with such bluster, such braggadocio, I have sent Benjamin Netanyahu all of the weapons he has asked for. And he even went on to say,
our weapons. I mean, our tax dollars paid for them.
He even went as far as to say He even asked for weapons I had never heard of and didn't know what they do. And I sent them anyway. So right there, he has implicated himself as being complicit before, during, and now after the fact.
Yeah, no, I would very much welcome seeing Donald Trump end his days behind bars, and whether it be behind bars in the United States or behind bars in The Hague. And this brings me to the second topic we were going to be dealing with,
Yes.
to wit, Maria Corina Machado, who is a Zionist, who supports fully the genocide in Gaza, and she's a warmonger. She has applauded the piracy of the United States in international waters in the Caribbean, sinking, I believe, 5 boats allegedly manned by Venezuelan drug smugglers. But if you know the reports of the United Nations Crime and Drug Office in Vienna, and I've read the 2025 report, I mean, Venezuela plays a minuscule role in international drug trafficking. Who are the big players in international drug trafficking? Mexico, Colombia, still Ecuador, Peru, but not Venezuela. And not only that, I personally interviewed, when I went to Venezuela as the first rapporteur in 21 years, I spent several hours with the Minister of Justice, what is called in Spanish the fiscal. The fiscal is a Lebanese whose name is Tariq William Saab, S-A-A-B, Saab.
Yes.
And he showed me the figures of how many drug traffickers have been arrested, how many have been prosecuted and sent to jail, how much drugs has been confiscated and destroyed. And I also have the latest information on this. Venezuela is a serious opponent of drug trafficking in its policies and in its actions. But you don't read that in the New York Times and in the Washington Post. You get the impression that Venezuela and that the government of Venezuela, Maduro himself, the president, is making money out of drug trafficking. Is completely false, completely defamatory. But if you have the great propaganda machine of the American mainstream media, a lot of people in the United States think that Maduro is a narco president. It's not so. I mean, I have the figures of how they very consistently persecute, prosecute, arrest, and send to jail those people who are engaged in any kind of drug trafficking.
You know, when I heard that Maria Corina Machado was going to be awarded the Peace Prize, the immediate thing that I thought about was she's really no more than Victoria Nuland in Ukraine.
Well, she is a successor of Juan Guaido, this buffoon, this puppet of the United States. Nobody knew him. And he suddenly declares himself the elected, legitimate leader of Venezuela in 2015. Come on, give me a break. But now Guaido benefited plenty
Oh, yeah.
from this position that the United States created for him. And now, of course, Machado has already benefited from over $1 million, which is the award from the Nobel Peace Prize Committee.
Mhm.
And let me read you from the Last Will and Testament of Alfred Nobel. This is from the year 1895. Who should be awarded the award? Quote, the person who shall have done the most or the best work for fraternity between nations, the abolition or reduction of standing armies, and the holding and promotion of peace congresses. Miss Machado has done none of that.
Mhm.
None of that. Who could have gotten this award? By the way, I, as a professor of law, am entitled to nominate.
Mhm.
And I have nominated in the past the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, WILPF.
Mhm.
It exists over 100 years. It's a very effective organization that has done a lot for world peace. They've never gotten the award. I have actually proposed it on 2 occasions. I've also proposed others, but I mean, I think WILPF definitely deserves it. UNESCO deserves it. The Foundation Culture of Peace. It was founded by the UNESCO president, Federico Mayor Zaragoza, who died a few months ago. I mean, Federico Mayor Zaragoza, if he had lived, would have been a worthy recipient of the award. Or, say, UNRWA. Also, the Al Jazeera journalists in Gaza. The members of the Zumud flotilla, who are trying to bring humanitarian aid to the starving Gaza population. The ICRC Director General, whom I know personally, Pierre Krehenbühl, would have been a worthy recipient, and a number of professors who teach the human right to peace, who teach the importance of building bridges, the importance of diplomacy, the importance of peaceful negotiations, among others. Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Professor John Mersheimer, Professor Glenn Deason, and among the politicians, usually I do not like to see the Nobel Peace Prize go to politicians. I'd rather it go to organizations, especially civil society organizations, or to individuals like Jeffrey Sachs. But if there's one politician that I admire, and her speech at the General Assembly a few weeks back was probably the best speech during the entire high-level section, was Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley.
Yes.
Mia Mottley is being considered for Secretary General of the United Nations. She is among those whose name is circulating. Another one is my former friend and United Nations colleague, Michelle Bachelet, the former president of Chile and the former High Commissioner for Human Rights. I organized for her and I opened the doors for her personal visit in Venezuela back in the year 2021. And in any event, she would be a serious contender. But of course, Mia Mottley would be better. She's much younger. She's very energetic. She is very clear in her ideas. She's very eloquent. So I would be very happy to see her in that job. Now, among the few deserving Nobel Peace Prize laureates, I would like to mention Henri Dunant, who founded the Red Cross, Bertha von Suttner, Albert Schweitzer, Martin Luther King Jr., Desmond Tutu, Oscar Arias, Mikhail Gorbachev, President Jimmy Carter, Jose Ramos Horta. There are some people who do deserve it, but who did not deserve it and got it? Henry Kissinger, Menachem Begin, Barack Obama, Abiy Ahmed, Maria Ressa, Dmitry Muratov. I could give you a list of 20, 30 Nobel Peace Prize laureates who are absolutely a disgrace. So for that reason, I would say abolish it.
When you just mentioned Obama's name, I had written a question. Were you disappointed when he received it? Were you disappointed at his speech when he mentions, I stand here in the shadow of Dr. King and I stand here in the shadow of Madiba, but I am the president of the United States. So I got a different job to do. And then the other part of that question is, he comes out and congratulates and applauds Machado as being this angel of peace when she's nothing more than an agent of regime change, which is why I mentioned Victoria Nuland. She's a warmonger
and someone who supports an increase of unilateral coercive measures against her own country.
That's why her Supreme Court has made it illegal for her to hold office for 15 years because she was engaged in treason against her.
I would call it treason myself. When you are acting against the interests of your country, when you know from reliable studies that these unilateral coercive measures have caused per year an estimated 40,000 additional deaths among children, among the elderly, among people who are of, shall we say, poor health. If you are diabetic and you do not get your insulin in time, you die. If you are HIV positive and you don't get your antiretroviral drugs, you die. And all of these things are under the sanctions, directly or indirectly. They tell you that there are carve-outs or that there are exceptions on paper, but they don't work because we live in a world where only money counts, and there is what you might call over-compliance. There is risk assessment on the part of pharmaceutical companies and on the part of businessmen. And they say, oh, no, it's too complicated to do business with Venezuela. We're not going to pay $1 million of fine or penalty to the U.S. Department of the Treasury. So we just simply drop Venezuela. So Venezuela, that has in the past depended on international trade to obtain certain things that they don't have, like medicines, like medical equipment, like scanners, like all sorts of dialysis machines, et cetera, they don't get it. So people die. Now, Machado knows of the report of Professor Jeffrey Sachs and Mark Weisbrot, dating back to 2017, called Collective Punishment, where it is shown that in that year alone, 2018, 40,000 Venezuelans lost their lives directly or indirectly as a result of the unilateral coercive measures. Now, about a month ago, the medical journal, The Lancet, came out with a fantastic report, very thorough, stating that, bearing in mind that about a bit more than 1/3 of humanity is affected by these unilateral coercive measures. The estimate is that per year in the entire world, and that means in Syria, that means in Iran, that means in Nicaragua, in Cuba, in so many countries that are under unilateral coercive measures, it is estimated, and this is a medical journal, a very professional journal, 500,000 human beings die every year. That's like a war. I mean, I say sanctions kill. Economic sanctions kill. Understand that. And you cannot support sanctions. But Ms. Machado does. So she is complicit in this crime against humanity, against her own people. So, I mean, she's just the spokeswoman for certain interests. And she doesn't seem to understand that she and her group are a very small minority. When I was rapporteur and I went to Venezuela, obviously I spoke in the universities and I spoke for professors and with the diplomats and with the press, etc., etc. But I also did something. I removed my bow tie, took off my dark suit, put on a guayabera, and since Spanish is my mother tongue, I went around meeting people incognito so that I could get an impression what the Venezuelan people thought. And I can assure you, the Venezuelan people, the vast majority of them, see the source of their misery not in Mr. Nicolas Maduro, but in the United States and in the greed of United States transnational corporations that have an enormous interest in getting hold of Venezuela's oil resources. As you know, Venezuela has the largest oil resources in the world. They're not being properly exploited because they are under unilateral coercive measures. But the oil is still there on the ground. They are, I think, the second greatest resource country for gold. They have so many natural resources, minerals, rare earths, that the country would be booming. Its economy would be booming the moment you lift the so-called economic sanctions, the moment you do away with the financial blockade. But Ms. Machado wants more sanctions. She wants more economic blockade, assuming, wrongly, that the Venezuelan people will turn against Maduro. She lives in her own world. It's like the United States and like the Europeans, who have imposed really grotesque economic sanctions on Russia. And Russia's economy has continued growing 2%, 3% per year, whereas the European economies are going down, all of them. I mean, especially Germany. I mean, this has been a catastrophe for Germany, these unilateral coercive measures. But the narrative is still, it will bring Russia down. The Russian people will revolt against Putin. And they have been giving you that narrative since 2014, because the first unilateral coercive measures against Russia were imposed in 2014 after the referendum under the rule of law that was held in Crimea, followed by a unilateral declaration of independence by the competent authority, by the parliament, followed by the necessary, shall we say, for its own protection. This little pocket called Crimea says, you know, if they are an independent state, they will be very quickly attacked by Ukraine or by some other countries. So they need to be reincorporated into Russia. And they had been since Catherine the Great, since 1783. They had been part of the Tsarist Empire and then part of the Soviet Empire in the province or oblast of Russia. And it was a Ukrainian, Khrushchev, who decided unilaterally that for administrative reasons it was a good idea to transfer Crimea to the oblast of Ukraine. That changed nothing for the people because everything in the Soviet Union was decided in Moscow anyway. And there were no consequences for the use of the Russian language. And there was a minuscule Ukrainian population in Crimea. So, I mean, Ukraine has no claim to it, ethnic, religiously, or otherwise. But we get the narrative all the time that Russia annexed Crimea. They didn't. I mean, it was a part of Ukraine. They had a referendum. They had a declaration of independence. The same as Kosovo became independent from Serbia. Effectively, Crimea became independent from Ukraine. And then, as an independent state, they request reintegration into Russia. That does not go automatically. It had to be studied, approved by the Russian parliament, the Duma. After the Russian parliament approves it, it gets examined and approved by the Constitutional Court of the Russian Federation. And only then was it signed by Putin. So this went through all the stages of the rule of law. So it was completely conformed with international law. But you read the New York Times, the Washington Post, and all of these sold out academics that will tell you this was an illegal annexation. It was not. It was an entirely, it was actually the realization of the self-determination of the people of Crimea.
Earlier in this conversation, you mentioned, you laid out a list of criteria, and you said based upon this, but basically who had been granted who had been made laureates who were undeserving, and you said based upon that, the prize should be abolished.
I think so. I think it's such a farce.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you think that awarding her the prize is the green light to Trump to invade Venezuela?
Well, it's one more element.
Okay.
I mean, Trump will use any excuse. I mean, he's invented this excuse of drug trafficking. They've sunk, 5 little boats and killed, I think, 24 people. I mean,
but I don't mean the green light in his mind. I don't mean the green light in his mind. I mean, was this a message from the committee to an international space?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Donald. Do what you got to do.
you could interpret it that way. As I say, this has become a farce. This is a purely political award. And the Nobel Peace Prize Committee is basically in the service of the Western hegemons. And they want to maintain Western hegemony. They're not interested in following the instructions, very clear instructions, in the last will and testament of Alfred Nobel. By the way, your readers should try to get this book. This is by far and away the best book on the subject.
Okay.
This is called The Real Nobel Peace Prize, a squandered opportunity to abolish war, written by a Norwegian lawyer, Frederick Heffermehl, published in Oslo, in Norway, in the year 2023. So it's very much up to date.
Okay.
And it gives you, it's a big book, as you see.
Yes.
It gives you all of the laureates up to the year 2022, and then says, these were the laureates, these were meritorious, these were not. And for those that were not meritorious, like Maria Ressa in 2022, it said it should have gone to somebody else. I already mentioned Federico Mayor Zaragoza, and he could have gotten it still in his lifetime. He could have gotten it in the year 2021. Here's Federico Mayor Zaragoza, and it explains why he deserved it, and he certainly deserved it. And there are many people who've done a lot of good work for peace and understanding, for building bridges among nations, for doing that what the Constitution of UNESCO tells us to do, to build bridges, to learn about other cultures, to learn about other civilizations, and to understand that we're a small planet and we should live together in peace. I mean, that's what it's all about, but it has become, like so much, an industry. And that's why I, again, indicate this book. I have shown in this book how the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights has been hijacked. How?
Hijacked by who?
By Western interests.
Okay.
By the collective West.
See, that's why I was asking the question about, was this a green light to Donald Trump to invade Venezuela, based upon the fact that...
Certainly, it is a signal. If you wish, go ahead. We won't object. And then you have the hijacking of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. You have the hijacking of the International Atomic Energy Agency, which has been very, very unfair and applied double standards in judging, for instance, Israel and judging Iran. I mean, Iran has cooperated incredibly with the International Atomic Energy Agency, but they don't care. By the way, you won't get it, huh? The current director of the IA, he's also running for the post of Secretary General of the United Nations. The difference is that it's not the turn of Western Europe. Western Europe and others have had already several. They've had an excess of Secretary Generals. And since the current Secretary General is from Portugal, that is the Western and others region. So the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency really has no chance. I think it definitely has to go to Latin America and the Caribbean, because it's now the turn of Latin America and the Caribbean. And I would welcome, for instance, the former foreign minister of Mexico. She's a very strong woman, and she's straight arrow. She would be a good Secretary General. My preference would be, of course, Mia Mottley, but also Michelle Bachelet from Chile would be a credible candidate.
Final question for you. What are your thoughts of or projections for Trump's so-called peace council in the region?
It's disgrace. How can you possibly think of Tony Blair, a war criminal? By the way, legal briefs were submitted to the ICC to prosecute the United Kingdom, and the United Kingdom is a signatory of the Rome Statute. Do you think that the prosecutor decided to pick it up? Of course not. There were legal briefs submitted with regard to other heads of state of the so-called coalition of the willing that raped Iraq in the year 2003 in that misguided and brutal attack about the oil of Iraq, to steal Iraq's oil, like the war against Syria, to steal Syria's oil. So I would say forget this so-called peace board. I mean, we already have all the mechanisms necessary to administer the territory. And if anyone from the outside, I mean, the decision should not be imposed by the United States and Israel, who is going to be administering this. I mean, this should be through the United Nations that actually bears the responsibility, not to say the guilt, for having created this terrorist state called Israel in the year 1948. By the way, there were conditions. When it was negotiated, the entry of this new state, Israel, into the United Nations, they were supposed to respect their borders. They were supposed to respect a Palestinian state. They were supposed to do all numbers of things, which of course they didn't do. And they got away with murder, including murdering the UN envoy, Volker Bernadotte. So, I mean, this is the Zionist experiment. It's an experiment, and it has failed. Israel is a failed state when in 80 years, you cannot live in peace with your neighbors. If you consistently expel the native population of the territories that you have robbed, because here we have a land grab that is clearly contrary to international law. When you attack Jordan and Lebanon and Syria and everybody else and Egypt, and you cannot have peace as equals with your neighbors, actually, then I would go for the other option. If they don't want to have a two-state solution, there's another option. This one.
Yep. Democracy. One person, one vote.
Exactly. Let the Palestinians, and they have a right to return, let the Palestinians return to their land, and you will have a majority of Palestinians in the territory of the old mandate Palestine. And then if the Israelis want to continue living there, yes, but as equal citizens.
Correct.
No privilege.
Correct.
I mean, one man, one vote. And of course, they don't want that. But unfortunately, the perception
Mm-hmm.
in the West is that Israel is the only democratic country in the Middle East,
That's a
that
lie.
it is a model of democracy and on rule of law. I mean, it's all a farce. It's all public relations. And you and I are financing this public relations campaign to sell the product being the state of Israel as a good state. Now, the fact is that most of the world is turning away from Israel, and there's this momentum to recognize the state of Palestine, which I find very important. That more and more states have recognized Palestine. By the way, Switzerland has not.
You're
We
right.
have a group. We have a group here in Switzerland, including ours, the Geneva International Peace Research Institute, who are pushing Bern to recognize that there's even a possibility that we might have a referendum of the population, that the population orders Bern to recognize Palestine. Otherwise, we're odd man out.
Mm-hmm.
If France has recognized it, if
Portugal,
and even how come Switzerland doesn't recognize it? We're supposed to be the home of human rights. We're supposed to be the home of international humanitarian law. So, as the case may be, we will continue fighting for the two-state solution because that is what the United Nations and the International Court of Justice has held, that is the way to go. But I mean, with a crazy man like Netanyahu in power in Israel, it will not be possible to have a two-state solution. So the only solution is to have Mr. Netanyahu abdicate, leave the post, as indeed has been suggested by Professor Jeffrey Sachs
mm-hmm.
in a number of his recent interviews. I mean, we cannot simply go back to business as usual. We cannot go back to dealing with a genocidal state. The genocide has occurred. And this peace deal, so-called peace deal, which is not a peace deal,
Mm-hmm.
does not erase the genocide, does not take away that the occupation is illegal and was always illegal. And the International Court of Justice has said so. So, I mean, either you have an international judicial instance called the International Court of Justice
Mm-hmm.
that you respect and that all disputes are submitted to it, or you don't have it. I mean, then let's go back to the law of the jungle. If you want to abandon civilization and you want to abandon all the advances with the rule of law that we have seen over the last 200 years, and that's essentially what Mr. Trump wants to do. He just wants to order people around. It is a level of aggression, a level of arrogance that is contrary to civilization itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that people would understand that. And I wish that Americans, like your listeners, would write to their congressmen and congresswomen, write to their senators and say, let's end this madness. We cannot be complicit in these crimes committed by our government, and Israel should not receive a red cent from the United States. Israel should pay back the billions and billions of dollars that have been given to it in the past. And beyond that, I would say you should write to your senators and congressmen and congresswomen to tell them, stop the war in Ukraine. The moment that the United States does not deliver any more weapons, Ukraine collapses.
As does Israel.
The Europeans won't be able to fill the gap. So who is maintaining this war? Not Putin. It's the United States and our tax dollars that have financed this war. So once again, we have to win one war, and that's the information war. We have to make sure that people are informed and that they know that the United States, our government under Donald Trump, and Israel, the government of Benjamin Netanyahu, are both outlaws.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a disgrace, but it's better to look at reality in the eye and know that this is an aberration and not do as if, it's business as usual.
Professor Alfred de Zayas, as always, thank you so much for your time. Phenomenal analysis, as always. I look forward to having you back.
Whenever. Pleasure.
Thank you. Folks, I have a question for you. Understanding, as Professor de Zayas was very, very clear, that Corina Machado has no qualifications, has no business with this award. How many of you knew who she was before the announcement was made? I'd like for those of you that can take a second and respond to that question in the chat. Do any of you think that she was the right choice, or as Professor de Zayas mentioned, is this another indicator that the committee is bankrupt and basically now serves no legitimate purpose? If you all could take some time and respond to those questions in the chat, I would greatly appreciate it. And again, let me thank Professor de Zayas for joining us today. Phenomenal analysis, as always. And thank you all so much for joining us and for listening to the program. Stay tuned. New episode tomorrow. Attorney Daryl Jones from the Transformative Justice Coalition is going to join us. There's going to be a protest, a voting rights protest in front of the Supreme Court, sponsored by the Transformative Justice Coalition on Wednesday. And voting rights attorney Daryl Jones is going to join us tomorrow to discuss the issues around that protest, the cases around that protest, and why we need to be ever vigilant to ensure that we don't lose one person, one vote, if even in fact we actually have it here in the United States. Please follow, subscribe, leave a review, share the show, follow us on social media. All the links are below. Remember that this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. Talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all tomorrow. Attorney Daryl Jones will join us. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a blessed remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Peace.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.